Welcome to the Leading the Way podcast. We are your hosts, Maza Zimmerman and J. Alvarado.
And on this show, we take a look at life through the lens of leadership. Welcome back, folks, and please remember to like and subscribe.
Yeah.
It really helps us out. So last week we were talking about, what did we end? Oh, we teased. That's right. I got to do the teaser last week. Right? That was fun. We were talking about self-awareness and emotional intelligence, right? So I don't know if that means like professional relationships or personal or both. What do you think?
For me, it's a little personal. I think where in my life where I became most self-aware of was my marriage when I first got married, because I went from, and I know we talked about it before, I went from living in the same house for 30 years into moving out and now living with my wife. And so every decision I made impacted that other person. Whereas before, when you don't live in, you got your parents, which they have their marriage, you have your siblings, they've got their own things going on. You can kind of make a decision and not let it necessarily impact the other people in the way where marriage does, where everything you do impacts that other person.
Right, yeah.
And so I had never really experienced it. I had never lived with anyone before. I'd never shared that type of intimate space with another person. And so now going into a marriage, there was a lot of self-discovery of who I am. What do I like? What do I don't like? Some of it you just don't know. You don't know what you don't like until it comes up and you realize, I don't like this. And there was a lot of self-reflection for me. I really discovered who I was as a person. And it started before I even got married. It started when I made the decision to leave music and kind of who am I? What do I really want? And kind of tested the waters a bit as far as career goes. And so the process had already started before that. And so once I got into my marriage, I was already on that road of self-discovery, and then it just magnified. And I really got to see who I was, because all of a sudden I had to think, every decision I had to make, I had to think of the other person. I had to think about my wife. How is this going to impact her? What is she going to do? And it's small stuff. It's not even the big decisions in life. It's, I like to sleep with the fan on. And I never realized how that really impacted me until I can't do it anymore.
Right.
Right. It's a little thing, right? And so now finding the balance of who I am and what I need and what I want and what I like, because those are two different things, right? I like this, I want this, but do I need this?
Right.
And really that kind of birthed the Maza I am today.
Right.
But it took a lot of really like processing. You swipe your card, it's processing. And it was a lot of that.
And compromise.
What I want, what I need, what I like, what I don't like. That's a lot of compromise, where I like this, but I may not be able to do this, right?
And it's not always just like things that you do. It could also be like things that you don't do, things that you're not aware of, or, like we're talking about relationships, not giving compliments enough, or, things like that a lot of us, and not to the gender stereotype, but a lot of men kind of like, we don't think about that stuff a lot. Like, everything's good. There's no reason to talk about it. That's how it goes.
Like, why are we talking about this?
Right.
It's no problem.
Yeah. Like, of course you're pretty. Why do I have to say it all the time? Right.
Don't you know?
Right. We have mirrors. Right. But see, the difference between us, I think, is that, I think we're 30, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I was 30.
Right? Which is funny, because that's what I say to my kids. I say, don't get married until you're 30. Because it is self-discovery, right?
Yeah.
So you had the opportunity to go through that a bit. I mean, we're always kind of going through that, but you had a chance to go through some self-discovery as an adult that I really didn't. I was married at 20 years old.
Oh, my God.
So I had a wife, but I couldn't legally buy beer, right?
What was I doing at 20? I don't even know.
Right. It's crazy. Yeah. Which means, we were so young when we started dating. When my ex-wife and I first started dating, I think I had been 17 for like a month. Like we started officially dating 1 month after I turned 17.
Yeah.
And that was it until I was in my 40s. Like we were together.
That's crazy.
Right. So we were kids, and we didn't really have that time of finding out who we are, the self-discovery as adults. We didn't have that single adult life. You're in your 20s and you're going out and you're going on dates or you're going out with friends and you're learning who you are. We didn't have that. Which not everybody does, and for some people works out just fine.
Yeah.
In our case, it really didn't work out because as we grew together, we also grew apart, and over time, it ultimately like killed the relationship.
And so I wrote something down because you said, you got married at 20, which is just mind-boggling to me. Just because I don't even remember what I was doing at 20.
I keep seeing on social media,
I don't even know where
all these people are like, my parents at 20, and they're like married or whatever with kids, and then now they're out partying. Like that's what it was.
I don't even know what I was maybe working at Ross. I don't even know. Like I don't know what I was doing at 20. And it's not like, oh, that was 50 years ago. No, it wasn't. It was 18 years ago. But but it's so funny because part of that self-discovery, and sometimes it takes a while for people to kind of discover who they are, because you can run from you for years. If someone else likes me, then I don't have to worry about liking me because they do. And sometimes you kind of live on not necessarily self-gratification, but the gratification of someone else. And so for me, I went from
like
relationship
external approval.
I went from relationship to relationship to relationship in my 20s. And I didn't necessarily have to focus on me because, well, she likes me, and so I must be good. I don't have to improve because someone likes me.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have to discover who I was. And so I ran from me for a while. And that it didn't come until later on in life. And then I was like, do I even like me? I know I like from an external perspective, I like what I'm doing, right? I like that I went to Europe and spent 21 days there.
Yeah.
I like that I did this, but do I like me?
So the superficial was fine.
Yeah, that was good. But I think that's part of the challenge sometimes is you can run from you. I don't want to go the extreme and say your entire life, but for years and months and days, you can run from you until you decide to, okay, let me see who I am. And if I like who I see in the mirror,
right.
Do I like who I am and how I process? Do I like how I make decisions? Do I like that?
Yeah.
And sometimes you can get caught up in the decision that you made and you forget, well, do you like how you process to make that decision? Because sometimes that's the lesson.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not the fact that, oh, that was a bad decision. And how you process decisions, that's what you've got to change. And so for me, that's what I had to kind of discover was who I am and do I like, because that's what ultimately changed. That's what caused the pivot was I didn't like me. I wasn't necessarily depressed. I just didn't like when I looked in the mirror,
Yeah.
I didn't like, I got to change so that if I'm in a room by myself, just me and nothing else, I'm content. And I don't have to do this or I don't have to do this or be with this person to be happy. I'm happy because I like me.
See, that's the key. And I think that's the benefit of going through that phase of self-discovery before you find a serious relationship is, you have to like yourself, right? That they say that a lot, where you have to love yourself before you can love anyone else.
You got to date you before you can date someone
Something
else.
like that, yeah, right. And a lot of people struggle with that. I still struggle with that. I'm still at a point now where I can step out of my life and look at what I'm doing. I like my career, I like where I'm at in life, and it's fine. But I still kind of think, okay, but do I like me? Is this me? It's still an identity thing that a lot of people struggle with, and I still struggle with it sometimes. It's not easy.
And if you're an extrovert, sometimes it's even harder. Because for me, I love people, and I say I'm happy, so I'm around people.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I always put myself with other people. I never really get a chance to be with myself because I'm always with someone else, or I'm with a group of people, or I'm going because everyone's going to be there. And then what I end up doing is it's not necessarily that I'm with them. I'm just running from me.
Yeah.
And so that's what I had to kind of get out of. And I'm still an extrovert. I still love people.
Right.
But I also am more firm with who I am as an individual.
Yeah. Because we all wear masks or hide behind masks to some degree or another.
Yeah.
I know for me that was most of my life. I had a really rough childhood, and when you go through a lot of traumatic experiences, you start to kind of, sometimes you self-medicate, and that can lead you in bad ways, but you find ways to cope, right? And they're not always healthy. But one of my defense mechanisms was my personality. So I'm polite and I'm nice and I smile and I'm good with everybody, whether I feel good inside or not. And it was a shield or armor that I learned to put on so that I could be with people and they would like being with me. A lot of people like hanging out with me. A lot of people like talking to me, and that's always been the case ever since I was a kid. I might have not been happy or been depressed or, felt like I hated myself at times, but I could always put that mask on and be the friendly guy that everybody knows,
Do you kind of, because it makes me think of kind of like people pleasing.
Right.
Would you say you were, because I know I was 100% a people pleaser. It's compromise myself constantly for the sake of someone else's happiness.
Right.
And so that was also where I ran from myself, I was always pleasing someone else, doing favors for other people, doing this, going here, because that's where they need help, and I got to be able to help them. And so did you find yourself in being kind of a nice, you're always been a nice guy, you've always been a good guy, in pleasing other people that kind of crutched you from really knowing who you were?
That's tough. We're getting very existential. So, because when I look at it now, right, I think it was, and it sounds terrible to say, but if I'm really being honest with myself, I used my personality as a way to manipulate others into liking me. So I never had or even tried to please other people. I didn't do favors for other people and stuff to get them to like me. I was just very likable and I would listen. And so people just naturally kind of gravitated towards me. So I think it was, and again, it came from a bad place and I wasn't necessarily conscious of it. I definitely wasn't conscious of it at the time, but yeah, I think I used my friendly personality as a way to manipulate people into liking me. And that's where I got my, external, external approval, right? To make me feel better. Because, especially as a kid, and it's sad to say, because a lot of kids go through it, but I never found a way, I couldn't make myself happy. I couldn't do it. And it's something I struggled with for a long, long time. But when I found that when I was nice to people, and I smiled, and I was funny, and I could make them laugh, they loved being with me. They loved hanging out with me. They would take my side. And so it's something I did as a defense mechanism.
But, I mean, it's not necessarily, all of that is not bad.
Right. It isn't. It feels like it might be, but it really isn't.
I mean, because what do you're manipulating them to like you. So, I'm just going to be nice. But did you find yourself being happier when you were nice? Or was it something like, I have to put the mask on to get them to like me? Because if that's who you are to the core, then that's just who you are.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what you were running from.
I think a lot of it was just trying to distract myself from my own emotions. Because I was really poor growing up, and I didn't have a lot of stuff. So I had friends that had stuff. So if I needed clothes, my friends would let me have their clothes. If my mom wasn't around and I was hungry.
So was that the game? So if you needed clothes and then you knew, well, if I do this, because now you're trying to gain something that has nothing to do with them liking me, I need to get what I need to get.
See, I think that's
different.
Because I never did that on purpose.
That sounds evil.
That does. I never did. I never had I'm going to go to my friend's house because he's got these cool pants I like. I'm going to get him to give it to me. I never thought of it that way. Yeah.
Well, you can have these pants.
It never became that. It was always I didn't think about it much, but I would compliment, oh, those are cool. Yeah. And they would always be like, I don't know if it was pity or what. I don't know what it was. They were
going to give them to you?
Yeah, but that was never the idea. It just kind of happened. I never said, what I should have said, no, it's I'm okay. I don't need that. Which is something I do now. A lot of people offer me stuff. I'm like, I'm okay. I'm already fine. Thank you, but no. But back then I was like, okay, cool. And I just had this amount of stuff that I got from all my friends and people I knew, and I would go over to their house and they would always feed me, so I would just hang out there. So I would know to go and hang out there. I didn't really think I'm going to go because I'm hungry. I'm going to go over there and they'll probably feed me, right? And that's just what I had to do when I was a kid.
Because that sounds
it felt like survival.
Also intuition. Like, well, you have good friends. Like, that's part of having the village is being able. That's a withdrawal.
Yeah.
Your kindness is the deposit. And then look, I'm hungry. Well, you can either sit at home and just continue to be hungry, or
Right.
you can go over your friend's house because they're going to feed you.
Right.
You weren't, you were friends with them. It's not like I'm using you for your food. I'm just going to stay over here every Tuesday or every day because I know you're going to feed me.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to make a withdrawal. And that's not necessarily a bad thing unless you have bad intentions. Unless you have ill intentions of, no, I don't care about this person.
Right.
I'm just trying to get food.
And that was never the case. And I've always it was never a one-way street. Like, anytime anybody's asked me for anything, any friend, I'm there. To this day, like, friends, family, they can ask me for anything and I'm there and I'll do it. I've never had a problem, like, helping people out if they needed it. And I think that was it. I think I needed help and I didn't know how to ask for it. So it was like, again, it was superficial. It was like, I need food. I need clothes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I needed a place to stay. And I would have to find that. And I wasn't thinking like, ooh, I'm going to trick somebody. It was like, this is something I need. And these are people that I care for. If they care for me, they're probably going to help me. And it was a way of getting what I needed without having to ask.
Yeah. And so knowing what you need, knowing what you want, which ultimately brings you the happiness, or the survival that you need is important. But then there's the contrary, right? Then there's the knowing what you don't need. Right, that's part of kind of like the lessons part of it. Of, okay, I know I have to stay away from this.
Right.
I know I don't need this. Like, for you being self-aware and knowing who you are, and coming out of the divorce and coming out of this industry and going into this industry, what was it that you knew you didn't need? Like, all right, this is what I have to avoid because I discovered this throughout the journey. I gotta stay away from this. It's not a person. It's like, well, I'm going to stay away from this person.
Right.
But sometimes that is the case.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's knowing who shouldn't be in your village. Okay, this person doesn't make good decisions, and I'm at a weak point in my life. I can't be around this person. Or I'm at a much better place in my life. I can't have this because that'll lead me to where I was before.
Yeah.
And so knowing what's not good. And sometimes it's little things. Sometimes it's the little things. Like for me, I grew up in a marching band, and I'm very timely when it comes to not like parties, but even like parties. I'm like the first one there, and I end up helping set up because I just have to be on time because I learned that from me in the marching band.
Yeah.
Right? You're early. You're on time if you're early. If you're on time, you're late. And so I'm a very timely person, and I give myself, like if I'm going to a gig or say a performance, I'll give myself 30 to 45 minutes of that kind of gap time where if the concert starts at 8 and I need to be there at 8, I'm going to get there at 7:15, 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
And it's not even, I'll sit in my car and just scroll just because the anxiety of running late, it'll mess up my day and it'll put me in a completely different mood. And those are the little things I know I have to avoid. I have to avoid being tardy because if not, the bigger things will happen.
Yeah.
And that's how it is for me.
I'm like that too. Like, for example, like right now when I teach, school starts at like 8:30, but we have to be like teachers have to be there by no later than 8:25, right? I literally live 8 minutes away. So if I step out of my front door, the time it takes me to walk to my classroom is 8 minutes. I still wake up at 5 a.m. every day, because I don't want to be rushed. I need to take my time. I need everything to kind of settle. And I need to be like, okay, double check everything's good. Okay, now I can proceed. Like I need that time.
Yeah. It's like I can feel, and I don't necessarily have a problem with traffic, but let me be running late. And I can feel not road rage, but it's like every little thing. The anxiety. I don't necessarily get angry, but the anxiety just continues to rise, and I'm just not in a good place. And so knowing to avoid that, I'm cool, calm, and collective. Because it's like my goal is to always remain cool, calm, and collective. That's how I'm at work. Nothing really gets me over the top, and I try to remain at a nice, even balance of the two.
Right.
Because that allows me to be able to sustain whatever it is and just continue the journey.
And that's that self-awareness. That's that emotional intelligence.
That's the self-awareness, knowing who you are to the core. What do you need in order to survive? What do you have to avoid? So for you specifically, what's something that you know you have to avoid in order to remain happy? Like, what did you learn throughout the process of making a series of, say, bad decisions?
Right.
Did you learn, okay, well, this is something I have to avoid?
That's kind of tough, because the easy answer is, because I think about my childhood, and I was how do I say, not rebellious, but I tried everything, the bad stuff kids shouldn't be doing. I did all that stuff, and I knew that it would be very easy for me to just lose myself in it, whether it was drugs or violence or girls, stuff that I was really into as a kid, like way before a kid should be into that stuff.
Well, you got married at 20.
I got married at 20. Yeah. So I knew that I had to be careful with that, for like, I didn't want to, I had a lot of that in my life, and I'd seen people that kind of went that way. I had a buddy of mine in, I think it was 7th or 8th grade. I think it was 7th grade, right? He used to come to school, and we'd go into the bathroom, and, he'd have like pot or whatever, like 7th grade, and we're smoking pot. And then one day he comes in, and he takes off his shoe, and he lifts the sole of his shoe, and he had dug a little space in the sole, and he pulls out this heroin syringe. We're in 7th grade, and he's like, "You want to shoot up?" I'm like, "Hell no, man." But I was there, and I'm still smoking pot with him, and he's like shooting up heroin in the bathroom at school. We're in 7th grade, but that things like that, where it's like, I would, at the time, I would have that temptation. I'd be like, you know what, maybe I'll give it a shot. Because I had that personality. I was like, yeah, why not? Let's try it. Like, let me just try this thing. But there were some things I know if I try it once, I'm probably going to be, it's going to lead me down the wrong path. But that was me growing up. That's the kind of stuff I had to go through, and like making those decisions was really hard for me as a kid.
I'm just so stuck on digging the hole in the shoe.
Yeah.
Like, you see people like cheat, and you think like the creative ways. I'm like,
Right.
Man, if you could just take that ingenuity and put it in something positive, like I would have never thought to, and I didn't grow up doing drugs or anything, but
Right.
I would have never thought to dig a hole in my shoe, because
Which is why he did it.
I would never think, as say a teacher, hey, take off your shoes. I want to make sure there's no drugs.
And lift the sole up.
And lift the sole, and that is insane. You lost me with that one. I just couldn't move on. You're talking, and I'm on the entire time I'm thinking, this man dug a hole. Not this man. This kid dug a hole. He obviously saw that from someone like grown.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, you got to put it in the sole of your shoes. Like, that is, jeez, that's insane. That is crazy. But yes, like sometimes it's people. Sometimes it's a balance between the two. Sometimes it's people. Sometimes it's utilizing those around you. I think for me, like I've had the same, my best friends for years, and I continue to meet good people like you, but for me, it wasn't necessarily people. It was more of like listening to those around me, because part of it was a bit of stubbornness for me, and a lot of the bad decisions I made, or the women I dated, they just weren't. And I remember specifically, I was in this one relationship, and everyone in my core said, that is not, don't. But I just wasn't self-aware. I wasn't even thinking about me.
Yeah.
I was only thinking about how it made me feel. I wasn't thinking about how I grew as a person, how I developed as a man, as, a potential father. I wasn't thinking that kind of stuff. And everyone around me was like, yo, this is just not. And so I had to make a bunch of mistakes in that relationship, and get my heart shattered and all this other stuff for me to learn, and then look back. It's like, wow. And it ended up being one of the best, because I grew so much out of it.
Yeah.
And I discovered so much of who I am because of what I didn't want. And that was probably the biggest point, where it was like, okay, I know what I have to avoid. But what it did was it just tipped me over on the edge. Now it was like, all right, now I was in defense mode for a minute after that, because I had a huge shield, and so I just didn't let anyone in. And the relationship I got into immediately after that, it was just like, it was one of those I had to kind of apologize afterwards, like, I'm sorry for who I was in that relationship, because I was just in defense mode the entire time and just would not, and I just didn't care.
See, that's interesting. So you went in defense mode and you had a positive. That I was the opposite. I let everybody in. I've always been an open book, and I still had to apologize for who I was.
Yeah, and so it's sometimes, that self-aware and emotional intelligence of knowing not necessarily what makes you angry, but how you react to that anger. Because you're going to get angry, right? That's an emotion. You're going to feel it. You're going to get sad, but how do you react to it?
Yeah.
You know,
what do you do with that?
What do you do with that? You know, anger is an emotion, but yelling at someone is a reaction. So it's not necessarily you got to get your emotions in check. You just have to get your reactions in check.
Right.
What do you do with that information?
Yeah.
And that's a part of the process.
Right.
That's part of the journey. You know.
That takes some learning. Takes some practice.
Yeah.
Sure.
And on that note, we have reached our time.
That's it. That's our time for today.
Yeah, that is it for today. But we do want to thank all the listeners, all the viewers, whether you're listening on your way to work, on your way to school, washing dishes, laying in bed scrolling, however you listen or watch, we just want to thank you. And just thank you for being on this journey with us. You know, all the listeners, all the viewers, we thank you, thank you, thank you.
Also, please visit our website. It's up now.
Yeah.
And on our contact page, you can ask us a question.
Yep.
We would love to hear some questions from the audience. We will try and answer them here on the show. So, yeah, please, it's leadingtheway.show.
Yep.
And, stop on by.
Peace.
All right. See ya.